study it. I'm not happy about it. It's not doing the trick. It's very simple. We're building a wall. Am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no.
President not sounding too thrilled about the deal reached by the negotiating committee tasked with ending the potential shutdown. Now, he went on to say this, which is giving out, well, some mixed signals.
I don't think you're going to see a shutdown. I wouldn't want to go to it now. The bottom line is on the wall. We're building the wall, and we're using other methods other than this. And in addition to this, we have a lot of things going. We have a lot of money in this country, and we're using some of that money, a small percentage of that money, to build the wall, which we desperately need.
He also went on to say that it will be the Democrats' fault if there is another shutdown. Okay. The deal, it includes about $1.4 billion for fencing and other barriers, as well as a reduction in the number of migrants that would be held in detention facilities. The agreement also includes nearly $2 billion for other border security measures like enhanced technology and more humanitarian aid. The big question, though, still remains. Will it get enough votes to pass the House and the Senate? And if it does, is it DOA once it reaches the president's desk, or will he sign the thing? My next guest, he's on the Bipartisan Conference Committee trying to avoid another shutdown. Congressman Henry Cuellar is a Democrat from Texas. So, Congressman, deal or no deal, do you think this thing gets through? Do you think the president signs it? He sent some mixed signals already today.
Well, certainly I don't think anybody wants to shut down after 35 days of that shutdown that the president called for. I think both Democrats, Republicans in the House and the Senate want to avoid this. This is a deal that Democrats would have written very differently. Republicans would have written it very differently. But we got together as appropriators, House and Senate, and worked out a deal. I think the president today, if I remember his words correctly, he said, I'm not thrilled about this. But then he later said, we're not going to have a shutdown. So I think that last part is important because nobody wants a shutdown. We want to move forward with the rest of the year.
To that end, to what the president said, that I think you fairly reiterated it, he said, you know what, we're going to build the wall anyway. Said that last night in El Paso, and then he went on to say, we'll find the money, we'll move it around. In effect, explain what reprogramming authority is, and would he really take money from places like, God forbid, the next disaster of a Puerto Rico, et cetera, to keep building his wall, even if you didn't give him the money today?
Well, I'm sure he wants to reprogram, move some money around. But the question is, if he does that, what is he going to take it away? Is he going to take it away from FEMA, which are the disasters that you mentioned? And we know that a lot of Republicans have already said no. Or is he going to take it away from the military, from our men and women in uniform? So he's got some very tough decisions. And the thing is, he's going to hurt other parts of the budget to try to fulfill his campaign promise. And, his campaign promise was, I'm going to build the wall. But the other part of it, he said Mexico's going to pay for it. Right now, the only ones paying for this are the American taxpayers and those 800,000 federal employees that were left without a paycheck for 35 days under his shutdown.
Well, speaking of paying a political price, we're already hearing some folks, including some folks that you share with on the right side of the Republican Party, and also some conservative talk show voices expressing real concern and criticism over the deal that you guys hammered out. Take a listen.
Candidly, what has been outlined tonight is not a serious attempt at securing our borders.
$1.3 billion? That's not even a wall, a barrier. Any Republican that supports this garbage compromise, you will have to explain.
Now, it's not your problem, Congressman, but at the same time, the last time we did this, you guys thought you had a deal, and the president listened to the Ann Coulters of the world, or the Sean Hannitys, and he blinked. Do you think the Freedom Caucus has that much juice that they could get the president, if they give him that hard of a time between now and Friday, that he won't sign the thing?
Well, I think the Freedom Caucus back in December sold them a bill of goods that didn't turn out the way they thought it was going to happen. As you know, 35 days, and after 35 days of a shutdown, what happened? We ended up back to where we wanted to be, open up the government, pay the employees, give us time to negotiate. And what's interesting also, if you look at December of 2018, the president, or at least the Senate, had $1.6 billion for the barrier. Where are we now? What was the negotiations? 1.375. So actually the president is below where he was in December. That's his, that he's got to deal with that, and I'm sure he'll spin it around to make it sound like a victory. But I can tell you, he's in a worse situation than what he was in December of 2018, and that's what happens when he listens to the far right.
Now, one of the things I know that you're not doing cartwheels over is the detention beds aspect of this deal. Explain for the folks who don't understand what that means, the difference between 40,000 beds and 58,000 beds, and why that was at least a deal point you thought you had to compromise on.
Well, the Republicans wanted 52,000 beds. We ended up at about 40, a little bit over 40,000, let's say roughly around 41,000. So it's below where he wanted. We're trying to find a balance to make sure we do not have catch and release, number one. But at the same time, keep in mind that if we do, let's say, roughly $55 billion for border security total, you have to look at costs. Are you going to take money and put it on the wall or put it somewhere else, take away money from TSA? Or are we going to take it away from Coast Guard? Are we going to take it away from UIC? As you know, New York City and other cities get millions of dollars because of that UIC funding for Homeland Security. We have to look at a cost-benefit analysis. It's a balance to find a way to provide the best border security, the best Homeland Security within a budget that's given to us for Homeland.
Finally, you obviously represent a district in a border state. For my viewers, they're up and down the eastern seaboard. We hear about this wall, and we can envision it, but we don't really appreciate it. The president spoke at length, and he chose to go to El Paso of all places, and he talked about the merits of the wall. Let me remind our audience what he had to say about how effective it's been.
There's no place better to talk about border security, whether they like it or not, because I've been hearing a lot of things. Oh, the wall didn't make that much of a difference. You know where it made a big difference? Right here in El Paso. I spoke to people that have been here a long time. They said when that wall went up, it's a whole different ball game. Is that a correct statement? But I don't care whether a mayor is a Republican or a Democrat. They're full of crap when they say it hasn't made a big difference.
Well, Congressman, the president, referring to that mayor, Republican mayor in El Paso, said, no, you look at the math here, the wall, we were safer before it even went up than after it was erected. But to quote the president, who's full of crap here in terms of how effective the wall was, using El Paso as an example?
Well, again, to all respect to the president doesn't let the facts stop him from saying certain things. I think we know that for a fact. The border crime rate, using FBI stats, including El Paso, but the whole border, whether it's rape, assaults, murders, the border crime rate is lower than the national crime rate, number one. You take a city like El Paso, compare it to Washington, D.C., and it doesn't matter if it's murder, assaults, rapes, any violent crime, that Washington, D.C. is about 3 or 4 times more dangerous than El Paso. And it's been like that for many, many years. And when I say more dangerous, I'm not talking about the politics here. I'm talking about those crimes that I mentioned. So he doesn't let that get in his way. The president does. If you want to stop drugs, where do the most drugs come in? Ports of entry. If you want to stop people from coming to the United States, 1/3 of them will come through the southern border. 67% of them come through a legal permit and visa. And I emphasize this part. If you look at most of the visa overstays, and a wall is not going to stop them because they'll fly or drive across a bridge, there are Canadians. Now, I'm not pushing for a wall in the northern part of the United States, but those are the facts itself. And let me give you a couple of things. There are drones now that can take 55 pounds of drugs that can fly over a wall. There are tunnels, 290 tunnels that they found. They can use catapults to throw the drugs over. They can use, you can spend $1 billion or billions of dollars on a fence I will find you a $100 ladder and they will climb over that ladder. And I'll give you this last point, which is very important. Every Border Patrol chief in Washington, D.C., under Bush, under Obama, and including Trump, when I've asked them this question in Homeland Appropriations, how much time does a wall or a fence stop somebody? All of them have said this, and I quote, a few minutes or a few seconds. That's what we're talking about.
Finally, the who and the when. Are there enough votes to pass this thing, and are we going to get this thing done before Thursday midnight?
You know, the far right is not going to be happy, as you mentioned a few minutes ago. The far left probably would not be happy, but we have to find a practical solution to this. And I feel that there will be enough votes in the House and the Senate to get the job done, and the president, quote, is not going to be thrilled about it. He doesn't want to see a shutdown because that affected him negatively on the polls. And I think he will sign it and then say, I'm not happy. I'm going to try to move monies around. We'll see what happens after that.
Hey, Congressman, fingers crossed here. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, from the House, we'll head to the Senate next. Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, he'll join us on the other side of the break, weighing in on the shutdown, his calls for an FBI probe of undocumented immigrants at the Trump Golf Club in his home state, and so much more.